Hey guys, what's up? This is FalseBulls123, and this is day 24 of my quarantine vlogs. Now, to be honest, inspiration is running a little bit dry on the daily vlogs as of, right this moment. Definitely going to be doing some brainstorming, definitely going to be doing, a little bit of, YouTube search and inspiration to see, what we might be able to do for fun, and just find some topics to chat about that isn't going to, eat in too badly into, my weekly vlog schedule. Because creating content is hard, you guys. Every week, I need to be getting up there, showing you my fat mug, and saying something that you want to click on. And sometimes that is a little hard to find. But considering that I have spent other portions of my life that aren't showing my face on camera, doing a lot of research, I do have a bit of knowledge that I can spew out of my mouth hole into your ear holes. And so I figured we'd do something like that. Now, if you guys follow my bullying blog, or if you just stalk me on the internet a little bit, you might know that my first time on the wikis writing, and I actually mentioned this in one of my earlier quarantine vlogs, is that I was basically a giant editor for, podcasting. I wrote a lot about it when I first started wiki writing, and so I actually, learned a lot about podcasting, about the culture, and all of that shit. Now, if you're part of podcasting, you might have heard of the McElroy Brothers. And it would be pretty hard not to have heard of them, because you can't swing a cat without hitting one of their podcasts. They are very prolific. More than you would think for three brothers from, West Virginia. And so, today and tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about pretty much every single podcast that I know of theirs. I'm going to talk about, the big two that I got into. Then and some of the discontinued ones that no longer produce. And then tomorrow I'm probably going to be discussing the ones that I had written about before during my podcasting wiki era, and some of the new ones that they come out with that I didn't even know about because I haven't been stalking them lately. So starting off, what was the first podcast that Travis, Justin, and Griffin did? That was called My Brother, and Me, which is very titular. The three brothers, and they're in a podcast. It works. And most people, the fans refer to him as Bim Bam. If you do want some information about them, there is a great dedicated wiki. I believe it's the Bim Bam wiki. And I'll post a link down below so that you can check them out, because they do some amazing work. And most of the stuff I've written about them, I would have not been able to collate as well without just that community there. Because they are very prolific, and they really are very passionate about the subject matter. So, recognizing that game, yo. Anyway, what is Bim Bam though, Ryan? Because you're not shutting up and telling us what we want to know. Bim Bam is a advice podcast for the modern era. And that spelling is intentional. And so basically what it is that one of them would, find a bunch of Yahoo questions, or go on Quora, or Forum Springs, or one of those, other early internet sites where people are just am I pregnant? What is a Luigi board? That type of thing. And so they would ask all of these silly questions, and the McElroy Brothers would just take the piss and, meme the fuck out of it. And it's hilarious, because they would just look up my Bim Bam quote, just type that into YouTube, watch a couple of those, animatics, or, dynamic typographic, clips that people make, and you will understand what the appeal of the Bim Bam is. There's, this really great one, it's a little bit of a meme between me and Chris, about this, glass shark, and it's hilarious, Justin just chews the furniture in the scene, and it's fucking great. So, if, it's basically just a very humorous, podcast where they just reach out on the internet and make fun of it. It's kind of some of those, early, it's almost a precursor to, Reddit reading, where you get, those ridiculous, making jokes of all, these dumb posts and stuff. Yeah. And it also has a lot of sort of, PMC more, is it pregnant? Because it does some of that, too. Now, I never watched all of the episodes, because there's 500 of them, and they're all an hour long, and I ain't got fucking time for that. No matter how much I am obsessed and or love the McElroy Brothers. However, I did... I forgot what I was saying. Anyway, and the reason why I say that is because a few years into it, like episode 300 and some shit, I'm not even going to fact check that in editing because it doesn't really matter for the story. They got together with their dad, whose name is Clint McElroy. He's actually a radio personality, though even in all of my internet research / stalking, I have not been able to find any of, like, his actual, like, just some radio routines or, like, the characters that he voices, even though they, like, do reference it occasionally during some of the podcasts. Anyway, they got together with, like, old Daddy-O, and they played D&D together, and it was fucking great, apparently. And so they thought, wow, this is great. You know what we should do? We should do this as another podcast. And at that time, they didn't have, like, the huge McElroy family brand. They didn't have the Bim Bam show on CISO. They weren't doing live shows or across the stage. Like, they didn't have, like, any of the book deals or, like, any of, like, the stuff they had now. It was, like, at least I'm pretty sure they didn't. It was pretty early into their career, if I remember correctly. And so they started the Adventure Zone, which is, like, one of their earlier podcasts. And so it starts out, it's, Griffin is the DM, and then Justin and Travis are, like, players along with Clint. And they all, like, they all roll their fantasy characters, and they start out with, like, what is it, The Minds of Phandalin, I believe it's called? Really early, like, starter kit stuff. And, like, I thought about buying that for, like, my D&D campaign, but it's, like, $50, and I'm just, like... I just want to make my own shit. Like, I don't like spending money, so nah. But Griffin actually, like, really rearranges it and actually ties it into his overarching story. It has a really good bridge narrative, but, like, there's so many parts of the Adventure Zone that are really great as a D&D campaign. For instance, there's a really just excellent bridge narrative that helps ties the modules together. There's a unified theme for each of the modules that really explains, like, they have these MacGuffins they're looking for. They have all this stuff going on. And so it really makes sense why they have these modules. And so there's sort of, like, a good progression for the story. There's also an amazing amount of world building, just a delightful concept of actually using magic items. A lot of issues in D&D campaigns is, like, how much magic items you give people. Is it a lot? Is it a little? And so the way they do it is just fantastic. Like, Griffin is a very intelligent guy, and he's, like, knows a lot about games as he is a game writer. He writes for Polygon. I believe that both Justin and Griffin write for Polygon, and before that they wrote for Joystick, which eventually became non-compete, but I'll talk about that later. And so, like, he really understands game design, so he made a really just well-fleshed-out campaign that was amazing. So, I've listened to... Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I haven't finished, like, the first arc of the show series. I've watched, like, all the way, like, out to, like, so the ending, and then I got halfway through that, but it's a lot, okay? Like, it is a really long podcast. And it's amazing, and I feel like shit for not finishing it, but, just roast me in the comments. And basically, right now, the Adventure Zone, I believe, is on its third arc by now. I know, like, I am such a trash human being for not keeping up with it, but... There's a lot of podcasts, and there's a lot of shit I do in my life, and I just don't have as much time anymore to, like, just sit down and listen, because I also, like, because I listen to about, like, one podcast a month for my bullying blog, just because I'm also watching, like, a lot of shit on YouTube, and Netflix, and a bunch of other places, and now that I started audiobooks, like, there's a lot of audio that takes up my time listening-wise, and, Anyway, I'm gonna move on, though. So Adventure Zone, if you like Critical Role, it's like that, but funnier, and also great. And I don't have any good adjectives about it. Just watch the fucking thing, laugh at it if you like comedy and D&D, and if you don't, then your life is sad and you mean nothing to me. I'm kidding, but... Now, moving on, I'm going to talk about the Discontinued Podcasts. And I realize that probably... When we get to part 2 of this video, all of my information is probably going to be, like, super outdated, because I honestly did not feel like doing 5 hours of research before making this video. I just wanted to ham it up and talk about the McElroy Brothers. Oh, another video you should check out, even though it's super boring and I'm sorry, is I actually did a deep dive video, like a deep dive commentary video, about a lawsuit that happened with Sawbones, which is one of the podcasts that Justin and his wife does. And I wanted to make it like this really cool Ready to Glare style video, but my editor was like being a piece of shit, and it was super, and it took me like over an hour. It took me several days to edit it, and by that point, oh my gosh, the editor I was using wouldn't allow me to use picture-in-picture because I didn't pay for, the thing. And so, basically, I couldn't get the quality as high as I wanted it to. So, maybe in the future, I'll, because I'm sure I still have I don't know if I do, but I'm sure I have, some of the raw footage somewhere. And I might remake it, or I might just refilm it, one of these days when I actually have good quality stuff. But if you guys want to check that out, see something else I did about the McElroy Brothers, that'd be super cool. So let's get on. To my knowledge, there's only been 4 discontinued podcasts officially. But there's probably a lot more that I just thought were still going and aren't. And you can correct me today and tomorrow in the comments about this. Like I said, I want a quick and easy video. I really didn't want to spend 50 million hours fact-checking all of these things, organizing and collating, because it's a fun daily vlog. It's not like this grand breakdown, everything about the McElroy Brothers that they ever did. Here's the history. Here's where they're born. Here's when they first saw a titty. No, it's not like that. So first up, and this is probably one of the older podcasts that they've ever done, was the Joystick Podcast. Like I said, Justin Griffin used to work for Joystick, which was a gaming blog way, way early internet when email sites were still a big thing and you still got your news from Yahoo and you played games on MSN and shit like that. If I remember correctly, Joystick was owned by one of those email sites. I'll just put the number here because that's as much research that I'm going to do for this video. And in some time, the 2000s, had to be after 2004 because that's when podcasts really hit the vogue. Basically, Joystick shut down because its parent company shut down. And so the podcast was discontinued because the whole company was discontinued. Now, Justin and Griffin work for Polygon, which is another gaming site. Sorry, a gaming news site. And they do some appearances on the Joystick Podcast. They do a few web series with Joystick. Ooh, who else does? It's not Joystick, with Polygon. Just like Brian David Gilbert, he has also worked for Polygon. And he does some more videos on those, so check him out too. He's not a part of this, I'm just thinking oh yeah, he works for Polygon. Anyway, and so they have done some stuff a Monster Factory, I believe is Polygon, and stuff like that. But I'm not going to talk about that just because they aren't the host of it. They're just employees that sometimes guest, and that's different. And so, but basically, let's move on to the next podcast. Next one up is Rose Buddies, which is one of those, fan casts. If you don't know, a fan cast is a podcast where the host will watch an episode of a show or something, and then they will talk about it. And it has a very easy episodic format. They have commentary. It's a lot like on The Talking Dead, but it's done by, not officials or members of the, the show. It's talked about by, just a couple of goofballs who want to talk about their favorite thing. And so that was done by Griffin and his wife, whose name I don't remember off the top of my head. And basically that was them watching The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, and the third one in that series that I don't watch because if there's 2 things I don't care about is celebrity dating and reality television. I've never actually seen it. I know I'm a shit human being. That might be a really fun thing to do on my bullying blog one of these years. It's just review every single McElroy podcast. That would be crazy because there is a lot of them. But they did it for several years along with, I believe Smanis is the other one that they did regularly. And eventually they ended it for a newer podcast that I don't remember off the top of my head. I will once I see the name tomorrow, but I don't remember what they replaced it with essentially. But they ended that one, they had a lot of fun with it, and they moved on to new stuff, which happens. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I've done in my life that I don't do anymore as a hobby just because it no longer interested me. So, moving on, we're going to get into two really also pretty old podcasts from the McElroy brand. To be honest, I've also never listened to these, but that's because they are much, much older, and I really just didn't want to dig through the Libsyn, archives for a show I wasn't even sure I was going to like. Now, these two were actually made by Justin and his wife, Sydney. So, they mentioned it a few times, but the main podcast that they did, the one that they're very well known for, is Sawbones, which is a medical advice podcast. A medical history podcast. It is not an advice podcast. And so they did two. They did Satellite Dish, which was an entertainment podcast, and they just sort of talked about shows together. And they did that for a bit of time. And then they also did another one called Losing the Sheen. And I love the idea of it, and once again, I have never listened to it, so roast me in the comments for being a fake fan. Losing the Sheen was another fan cast about 2.5 men, but they both started watching it after the main lead, Charlie Sheen, left the show. And I love the concept of that because, while I absolutely hated 2.5 Men, it was a shitty sitcom. It was about some man whore being a whore with some off-brand odd couple, beta male dude, and and it just sucked. I didn't care that Charlie Sheen was a whore. I really did not. Was it funny? Honestly, it was just kind of dumb. But I also, and it's not that I have anything against, promiscuous characters. I think Angel Dust from Hazbin Hotel is hilarious, and he is, honestly, the best character of that entire show. I know, roast me in the comments, but, that is a fun character who's, super slutty. Or, for instance, Haruhi from Beastars, we just mentioned them. Another promiscuous character. I really enjoy them because they're characterized well. They have an interesting thing. They even, deal with, all the sex stuff, really as a character development. You can have slutty characters in a show and have them be good. 2.5 Men just wasn't funny, and it was boring. And that is my strong opinion about it. But now that I've gotten done with my little side-off diatribe, I think it was a really interesting concept just because Charlie Sheen was kind of the face of that show. He was kind of it was 2.5 Men, but it was really just men, and then 1.5 on the side. You looked over, and it was just the other two yokels. Also, I'm trying to remember, was the kid there the entire time, and I just didn't notice? Because I feel like he doesn't show up in every episode. Anyway. But yeah, they lose him, and they replace him with, the guy from, the 70s show, I'm pretty sure. And I never really understood that, but I didn't really care because I didn't watch the show. But I thought it was interesting because, they had not watched the show until he left. And so it was just pretty much an interesting premise where it's not almost apathetic. So I'm going to have to check some of these podcasts out one of these days. I might, a couple years from now, I might review all of the McElroy, podcasts just as a fun little, Boolean blog thing. I already have an event. I'm getting off topic here, but I already have an event planned for, next year coming up. Because at 100 articles written for, my blog, I'm going to do, a little special event thing that I'm not going to spoil for you. Because that will keep you interested. Anyway, guys, that was the first 2 podcasts that I ever listened to in the McElroys, and then 4 of the discontinued ones. Tomorrow is going to be a bit longer of a video, but I'm going to be a lot more streamlined about them. I'm going to shut up a lot more so we can get to the meat. And I'm just going to be walking you through every other podcast the McElroys have, ever done. Because there's a fucking lot of them. And most of it's just going to be me looking at a screen and yammering. But hey, I had a lot of fun today, as I always do. Honestly, with the quarantine, I have just been going a little stir crazy, and today I've been feeling really meh. I just been feeling kind of shitty, Not physically, but emotionally, just because, like, my boss texted me and it's like, hey, it's going to be like 3 more weeks of this, and I'm just like, it's already been 4 weeks of this, and I can't even, you know? I hate just, it gets me clammy, it gets me antsy. And so I'm just trying to do my best, trying to, like, live my best life. And, yeah, I've been trying to work on myself, I've been trying to work on my channel, and some of the stuff I have goals for, I'm doing. Other stuff I don't have time for, so it happens. You think you'd have time to quarantine? Sometimes not. Anyway, as always, remember you can like this, because that lets me know how I'm doing, what sort of content you enjoy from me, so I can make more of it and get them cash money, y'all. And it lets YouTube know that I'm the baddest bitch that needs all the love and affection. You can comment down below, like I've been saying, roast me down below. Tell me I'm a piece of shit for not watching your favorite podcast. But also, tell me, have you heard of the McElroy Brothers? And if so, what are your favorite podcasts by them? My favorite is Sawbones, and let me know if you think that's the best one, or if it's something completely different, because they have a lot of them. And you can always share. So if you have a friend out there, if you have a mama or a papa, or like just some obscure random person in your friends list who you think wants to watch some random fuck from Medford, Oregon chat about McElroy Podcast very badly for 20 minutes, you know who to send them to. It's this bitch. So guys, I hope you had fun. I'm going to say I had fun, whether or not I did or not, but I hope you had fun. And all in all, this is False Bulls 1 to 3, and I'm signing off.